now we're ready to clean everything. So here we are at the sink. Now, you're going to want to use warm water, a soft toothbrush, and I recommend using Dawn dish liquid. That works great. Not the cheap stuff. Dawn cleans very well, and it's worth the extra money. So you're going to put on some warm water. You don't want it hot, but you want it warm enough so that it will help to remove the dirt. So wet your toothbrush, put on some Dawn. And grab your first victim. Now, as far as the, I only usually do the hands and not the whole limbs unless they're dirty for some reason, which usually would only be if the figure had no clothes. Sometimes the whole body's dirty, but usually you don't have to wash the whole body, just the hands, because that's the part that usually is sticking out of the uniform. Hands and the head. These don't look dirty, but I'm going to clean them anyway because they're 40 plus years old. So just give them a good once over. Nice and squeaky clean. And don't be afraid to scrub on these guys. If they haven't been repainted and they're original MEGO paint, you're not going to scrub it off with some Dawn and some warm water and a toothbrush. I've scrubbed these things pretty hard, and I've never noticed any paint loss from that. Now, I'm not saying go to nutso on it. I mean, you know, don't do more than you have to, but don't be afraid to, you know, give it a nice firm brushing. You're going to get all the dirt out that way. And they clean up really nice, believe it or not. Usually if they're real dirty, I'll go over them once, rinse them off, and then go over them a second time. I'm talking about the heads mostly, but that applies to pretty much anything. Now you'll notice on Spider-Man here, I'm going to pretty much submerge him in the running water here, getting his internal elastic all wet. Now normally I would not do that if he had good elastic, because the elastic is fabric covered, and especially if it's vintage, it could potentially ruin the elastic. So, you know, you don't do this if it's got good elastic in it, because you don't really want to get that too wet inside. But since he's going to be totally restrung, I'm not really that worried about it. Sometimes you can use something a little bit more abrasive if something's being a little stubborn. Now this is blue Scotch-Brite. Never ever use the green Scotch-Brite. I mean, you will scratch your toys. It's equivalent to using sandpaper. This is pretty gentle. It's for use on Teflon, so you know that it's not going to be horribly detrimental. But still, don't go nuts with it. Just be smart. You can see you don't need to use a lot of harsh chemicals and stuff. This is just Dawn and warm water and a toothbrush, and you can see it's almost as good as new. That we can get off. We just scrape it with something a little bit, maybe a little butter knife or something. Now watch the difference after the Joker's clean. Look how filthy he is now. Look at that. Night and day. I think Batman stabbed him a couple times in the chest. Now we're going to wash the uniforms. See that spot, that nasty spot? Pretty sure that'll come out. Now if it doesn't come out, we could try some spot remover, or something like maybe some shout or some lighter fluid, or but you want to try the least invasive method first, which basically is warm water and Dawn and some OxyClean. So don't want to use hot water on these, although MEGO outfits don't tend to bleed as much as some other companies' stuff. It's still possible. So I would never use hot water. You can use warm is fine. I think that helps clean them better than if you did them in cold. So, get them all nice and wet. Kind of give them a first rinse out. Then take some Dawn and just kind of be your own little washing machine. Now, if these were really filthy, you'd be seeing nasty brown suds coming off of my hands. So these actually weren't too bad to begin with. You can see that not a lot of really dirty soap coming off of them. And there's possibility that, sometimes you don't even need to go this step. Just the OxyClean sometimes will be enough. But it can't hurt to clean them first. So rinse them out, get all the soap out of them. Get yourself a bowl. This is a medium Pyrex bowl. And get yourself some OxyClean. I've got both the liquid and the crystals, the powder. Use maybe about 2/3 of one of these scoops. That should be enough. But I got more of the powder, so I just decided to use that. Since I actually haven't tried the liquid yet, but I don't see why it would work any different. I'm just not sure how much to use, and I've used the powder enough times that I kind of know how much to use now. So make sure you stir it up to dissolve all the crystals. Maybe don't stir it as vigorously as I am, since you're splashing half of it out of the bowl. And dip your clothes in there, kind of squish them around, get the OxyClean all into the fibers. Now, another method you could use to wash these clothes with the Dawn is you could use it on the toothbrush and kind of gently scrub them, back and forth, especially if you got some really stubborn stains. That might help even more than just squishing them and rubbing them together like I showed you. But either way, whatever you're comfortable with. Now also, you're not going to want to mix colors and whites. just like you wouldn't if you're washing your own clothes, just to be safe. They may not run together, but why take the chance? So then you're just going to want to let this stuff sit. I would stir it every couple hours to reactivate the OxyClean suds, and I usually let it sit overnight. Now we need to fix these pelvises so that we can restring these other figures. Unfortunately, I don't have any rubber bands, so I'm going to use packing tape just to hold the pieces together after I glue them. So just get yourself a piece of scrap paper, or this is just old junk mail. I just ripped it in half, and you can use that to spread your epoxy out, because it has to be mixed. In case you're unaware how epoxy works, you put equal amounts out of the two sides here. That should be plenty. 5 minute means you have 5 minutes to work with it before it starts to harden. They have variable hardening rates on epoxy, but I think 1 minute's epoxy is a little too fast for stuff like this, and you don't want it taking forever, like 15, 20, half an hour epoxy or whatever they make. 5 minutes usually just right. So you want to mix it completely, thoroughly. I'm using a toothpick, which I'm going to also use as an applicator. So on this one, the only part that's split is the crotch here, so just fill it up liberally there. Squeeze it together. And just take a paper towel or a napkin or a rag and just wipe off the excess. And for this, that's good enough. Doesn't need excessive clamping force. Just needs to be stuck together. Now this one, since it's completely broken, we're going to have to glue it in 4 different spots here. So all the pins have broke. So we're going to do one there, one there, crotch pin, and then the center pin where we run our elastic up over when we do my alternate stringing method. Again, same deal. Squeeze it nice and hard together and then just wipe off the excess. And then use your rubber band or tape or whatever. You could even use some vice grips or a vise, as long as you're not being too severe with them, to hold them together, or any kind of clamp really. You just want to be aware that you're clamping plastic, so you don't want to, if you're putting it in a metal vise or vice grips, you're not going to want to really reef on it, because then you just pretty much are going to break it. Now this one, I wanted to double tape it up because I didn't feel that one piece was probably going to be good enough. Also because it had been broken into 2 pieces. And we're just going to let them sit overnight. I mean, technically it'd be probably dry in an hour, but I like to let them sit as long as possible, and I'm in no hurry. And next we're going to work on these broken holes in the top of the legs here. Now here's something that will come in handy for you to sew the snaps and loose seams back on if you're any good at sewing at all. Dollar store. Can't beat it for $1. I think a spool of thread at wherever you buy thread, Joann Fabrics or places like that, probably cost you more than $1 just for a spool of thread. Now these of course aren't full spools of thread, but I mean 3 needles or whatever they give you in there, and a bunch of different colors, basic colors for $1. Now, also while I was at the dollar store, I found this thing of safety pins. And while I was looking at them, my idea bulb went off in my head, and I realized I could probably use these to fix the holes that have been split on these Action Jackson legs. I'm going to take a pin, cut it in half, bend the wires, and push them through on either side of these holes where the plastic's still good, essentially making the little round hole on the bottom of the pin the new hole. And being metal, it should be even stronger than the original. They give you an assortment of sizes of pins. This is the one I chose. I'm not sure if it really makes any difference. The part that makes a difference is the size of the hole, which I think they're all the same, but I didn't really compare them. This is about 1 inch long or so, maybe a little more. So I cut it in half, cut the head off and the pointy part off, and then bend at 90 degrees to elbows. So what we're going to do is I'm going to push it through basically like that. Now, I figured the best method would be to heat it up so that it actually melts its way through the plastic. I think that's the easiest way to do this. At first I tried using a lighter, but I couldn't get the pin hot enough. It just barely punctured the surface of the plastic. And I'm sure if I probably would have sat there with the lighter on it, I probably could have eventually got it through, but I was afraid I might melt the plastic of the leg in the process. So what I realized was a better solution was to use a soldering iron. So here's the finished product after we pushed it through with the soldering iron. And you take the legs that pushed through from the other side of the plastic and take some little needle nose pliers and bend them up around the boss there to reinforce that and keep it from moving or pulling out. And we pretty much got a perfectly repaired Type 0 MEGO leg there. We also work on Type 1. They're the exact same thing. Type 2 is a totally different setup. Let's check on our bowl of OxyClean uniforms. Now, through the magic of video, it's now 16 hours later, actually. Or maybe it's 14 hours later. Either way, it's overnight and most of the morning. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to rinse them out. Turn on your warm water. And pretty much you're just going to want to rinse all the OxyClean out of the uniforms. You don't want to leave any in there if possible, because it kind of does sometimes dry with a crusty residue, a white crusty residue. So do your best to get it out of there. And it rinses out fairly easily, so. Now, as you can see here, that stuff did come off in the OxyClean. Now, there is a little bit of a stain or residue, whatever that stuff was, left. Now, I may attempt to tackle that a little bit more after I I get done cleaning these uniforms. It shows up more on the camera actually than it does with the human eye in person, believe it or not. I think what I'm going to do is take a little bit of a Dawn on the toothbrush and kind of go back and forth on the grain of the fabric here and rinse it out again, and that should take care of 95% of that. Those cuffs came out nice, huh? So here we are. We're going to lay them out on this microfiber cloth. Lay them out flat, kind of smooth all the wrinkles and folds out of them. And this is your chance to let the wetness work for you. If you just crumble them up into a ball and let them dry, they're going to dry like that. See, if you fold them like this, that's what it's going to look like when you're done. Now, as far as some of the polyester ones, like this Joker jacket, sometimes they're a little finicky. You might want to flip it over, put something on it to keep the lapels from flipping into weird positions. But most of the time, you just lay them out like this, and they dry pretty nice.